support you all and learn more about issues that you are running into so we can help and support the overall climate space. With that, I'll pass it to Lena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lena. I have marketing experience of about 15 years in creating powerful brands for transformative companies, as well as working on the entire funnel of marketing. And most recently, I've worked on climate tech related industries such as sustainable agriculture. Before that, I've done work in digital health, as well as telecom, hardware, and devices. Excited to be here.
Okay, with that, I will pass it back to our speaker, Deepti. Take it away, Deepti.
Thank you for having me here today. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Deepti Illa. I'm the CEO and Growth Principal at Thedas. We are a go-to-market consulting firm, and we're specializing in climate tech companies as well as climate forward initiatives within larger companies. You can see some of the logos we've supported the last year. These are NGOs as well as startups in the climate tech space, or like I mentioned, larger companies that have a climate or sustainability focused project in their companies. So in terms of my background, prior to starting this consulting venture, I worked at several notable brands such as Google, Salesforce, Cisco, RingCentral, Matterport, and I focus mostly on growth and demand generation, as well as branding and like launching new products in market. But a lot of the focus, I would say, in companies like Google was on driving product-led growth. So like building products with growth in the software itself, right? So I have a lot of experience on that side of things. And then we also were selling to large enterprises. And so in that case, understanding how the selling motion works, how to build out your funnel, and how to bring awareness and interest, and then drive the actual sale of those products. That's another thing that I worked on. So that's why we are a go-to-market consulting firm, because we think about product as well as marketing, as well as sales when we approach solutions. So I think in terms of the topic and kind of setting the stage, Phil, you wanted to talk about the problem space a little bit. Did you want to cover that before we launch into some of the digital marketing principles?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the things that we have encountered when we're working with early stage companies, particularly in climate, is that it's really important to have a brand foundation, to have a message about who you are and what you're about, what your mission is, and then dig into to clarifying the problem, because people need to understand the specific problem that we're talking about. We could be talking about water, for example. Water came to mind because of the typhoon in the Philippines and some of our colleagues who are really struggling in that country. Well, that's an example of too much water in the wrong place, maybe because of a climate-driven event. But the problems that happen related to water, contamination with water, collecting rainwater, too little water in one place, those are, someone's mission might be about providing fair access to water, but what is your specific solution? What is the vision of your company? Those things need to be clear. And then you need to figure out how to execute those effectively on the tools that you're going to be using in a way that's going to reach the audience that you're targeting, whether it's for customers, whether it's for partners, whether it's for employees. And all of those things are really important. And the other thing that we're learning is that the platforms keep changing, the systems keep changing. And no matter how much experts we are today, we have to really be engaged and remind ourselves all the time that we have to keep working, engaging, improving, and learning to be able to continue to be experts in the chosen area of where we're going. We live this all the time. We've had these conversations just today, and we know that they're really important to early stage companies. So, that's how I see the problem. I'm curious, Kira, to Jalen or Lena, if you'd add anything else to that description.
No, I have nothing to add. I think that was great.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful, great framing. The only thing I would also add is It's many elements of like knowing your customer in there and making sure the person who's going to buy your product is the person you're marketing to and little things like that. But I'm sure we'll get deeper into that. I think it's really prevalent in climate, given how vast the solutions they provide. So I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thanks, guys. And Deepti, we are about I'm checking in on the poll. We're about 50%, 44% participation on the poll. So let me know when you want us to end it so we can give you some of the insights.
Yeah, I think I'll keep you posted on that. Once we begin the audience section, that's when we could end it.
And can I just make a quick ask of the audience? If you haven't participated in the poll, please do, because there are 3 questions. They're super quick, but it looks like only a few of you have done it thus far. And it's really this poll is really to help us tailor this conversation toward your specific needs and interests.
Okay, well, so without further ado, let's dive into this. I think, as Phil mentioned, this is a very interesting time because there's such a huge proliferation of digital channels. And in the climate space in particular, there are new constituents that you're talking to that you have to develop in their own unique ways. And there's the user or the consumer is faced with so many messages hitting them on so many channels that it really is very cluttered. So you do need a proper strategy to address this challenge, right? And it's always been challenging to do digital, but it's more challenging, I feel, in these times and days, because of the proliferation and like the overconsumption of media. So the more you can do to have a structured approach to this, will give you a lot more peace of mind. And so what I wanted to do today is talk about some of the general principles of digital marketing, and then we'll talk about how we should think about it in the climate context. This is core to any good marketing strategy, and that first step is to really understand your audience. Think Jalen was talking about this earlier when he said, like, who is your ideal buyer? Who is your user? And who is influencing them? So your buyer and the user and the influencer may be different people, but you need to understand that audience and what is their journey online. Since we're talking about digital today and not, other forms of marketing like events and so on, really we need to understand their online journey. How are they consuming information and how are they making decisions? So that is the first pillar. The second one really is about understanding the channels. There's a lot going on, but you need to understand how to activate each channel and when should you use it, what are the merits and demerits, and which stage do you want to activate in your own company's journey do you want to activate this channel. The third pillar is messaging. This is what are you going to say to your audience in the channels that you're going to be saying them in. And you have to have a way of saying what your company and your brand does, what your products do, and how they're solving the unique pain points of the buyer or the user. And so I call it a messaging house because depending on what level you're talking to an audience, you can pick that part of the house. So if you're doing a press release, you want to talk about some of the top high level messages and the brand promise and the value that your company is bringing to a particular problem area. If you're doing maybe an email campaign, you want to talk about some of your solutions or some of your product, maybe a product roadmap. So it depends on where who your audience is and where you want to position yourself. And then finally, kind of bringing it all together in one coherent strategy and figuring out the timing of the launch of these elements and measuring and fine tuning is very critical. It's not good digital marketing does not happen by just setting it and forgetting it. You have to fine tune it. And that's from years and years of learning in the trenches that what might seem like a not so great campaign can become an amazing campaign which produces a lot of revenue and pipeline if you can only like, tweak it a little bit and understand what you may have done in your targeting or in your messaging. So that's kind of a basic on the digital marketing playbook. But what is interesting is if we apply it into the climate space, the same thing needs to be varied a little bit. Because this is my observation in the last year and a half of really diving into the climate space. And I'd love to hear others' perspectives. You feel free to type it in or chime in. But the audience profiles are different, and the climate tech industry itself is nascent in some cases. And there's one solution could have multiple use cases. Like we're working with a client that has geospatial technology. It can be applied in agriculture, urban planning, disaster response, like 10 other use cases I can think of. But, and so in each of those cases, the audience is different. So in that case, what we advise our client is to lead with your strongest user base and strongest application in that industry and build from that. Don't try to boil the ocean and be a generic one size fits all. Lead with some of your strongest use cases. The second thing really is budget. Budget's a concern because if you are, a lot of startups are in the innovation stage in the climate space, and then they tend to either want to hold their cash for GTM when the product is really, really ready, or further down stream. But what we're suggesting is to start small. You want to learn about the user behavior, and you want to start iterating with messages, bit by bit. You don't want to wait until everything is ready to launch a marketing campaign, because a lot of what you need to do in these early stages is put a message, see how that's resonating, see what the users are, or your buyers are leaning towards, and then you're also seeding the market for when you're eventually going to be ready for your alpha or whatever general release is going to be. So it's important to think about budget, but start small and iterate and add as you go, as you're seeing success. The third important pillar I would say for climate is showing impact. Impact stories are so important, because a lot of climate startups are funded by grants or by impact investors, and they care a lot about the environmental impact this grant is having, in addition to meeting the business goals that they've set for you. So you may have a certain amount of leads or deals or revenue you need to meet, but you also need to be able to show positive environmental impact. So don't, from the beginning, train your processes internally, your sales team, your account managers, whoever's dealing with customer support, like start to showcase these internally, and then start to make it a habit of showcasing them externally in your press and your organic media and your paid media. That'll go a long way in attracting future investors to your startup or your company. And the final thing I will say on climate, and what I've noticed as a pattern, is this notion of word of mouth and advocacy. We interview a lot of users and buyers as part of, to build out a journey map usually for our clients, and invariably everyone, when I ask them, how did you hear about so-and-so product or so-and-so company or software, they say, oh, I heard it from a peer, I heard it from my study group in university, or I heard it from another company where there's a chief sustainability officer in another company told me about this. That's why I'm using it, right? So do not discount the importance of word of mouth. This is still a small but growing industry, and trust goes a long way. And so if you can make advocates of your existing customers and let them, go out there and spread the good word about all the good stuff you're doing, it'll go a long way. And it's free, and it builds trust. And so you just have to build that into your product. It's not a marketing channel per se, but it is a way of doing business. So that's kind of how we're thinking about the 4 pillars of digital marketing. I'll go into each of these one by one. And the first one really is the audience. So let's go there. And then Phil, you can close the poll if everyone's participated.
I'm working on that right now.
Okay, thank you. So Simon Sinek is someone I follow, and he had this interesting piece of wisdom to impart. And he's a business leadership coach, as some of you may know. And this is so relevant for audience building and marketing. Oftentimes we tend to say, oh, let's spray and pray and let's reach the broadest audience we can. But really, you're wasting a lot of time and effort and dollars in trying to go after broad audiences. Whereas if you're focused and if you know who you want to go after in a more targeted fashion, you're going to get the right message to them, and they're going to be a lot more responsive to you. And you're going to have a much better outcome with your marketing campaign. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as you're developing your audience. The first step really in this audience building stage is to identify your personas, your core buyer personas, user personas, and start to build them out like as real people. Like, what do you know about them? And again, this could differ very much in a B2B versus B2C or B2G government context. So keep that in mind, but you have to build out your ideal customer profile and really understand, what industry are they in? What is their role? Where are they located? Things like that. Build out a good psychographic demographic profile of your persona. And once you have that, then you start to build out do your online research. And this is an important step. I'll talk about some of the tools for online research, but you can do this through qualitative as well as quantitative means. Qualitatively, you can talk to people in your network, people that you're looking to sell to, and like understand what is their buying journey like. Right? And the personas that you've targeted, what are they looking for? And this not only gives you a sense for their pain points and what you should focus on when you market to them, but sometimes you may not have thought about your solution in that way. You may be creating a new market opportunity for yourself. So some of the tools that I recommend for online research are the following, and we'll go through these in some detail. But the key to all of these is to have a really consistent approach whenever you're going after a new persona. Like, kind of go through this checklist. Like, what are you looking to know about these personas in terms of what are they thinking when they have a problem? What are they doing? What are they searching for? And then once they have a bunch of tools to research, which ones are they going for and why are they picking one versus the other? So these kinds of questions that you're forming in your mind are great questions to put into survey platforms, which is the first tool. Like, there are so many ways to survey people now. There's Google Forms, which you can pull up and you can do it in like a couple of minutes. You can quickly get a survey designed. You have Momentive, Qualtrics, which are more established players. Momentive is SurveyMonkey, but it's been rebranded. And there's also global panels. So if you want a huge panel of people in a certain country that you want to poll about solar installations, let's say, you can go to some of these panel providers like Datamam and Dynata to get a larger section of people to poll. Web analytics is an important one that I would say a lot of people forget. So like, you have a presence, start to understand, you have a web presence, I'm assuming a lot of you, start to understand, where the traffic is coming from. Even if you've just launched your website like 6 months ago, you still have traffic coming to it. And your search engine results are probably already optimized to an extent, and you're starting to see patterns. So like, really try to understand that, because once you start your marketing, it's important to know what your baseline was before you really did your demand gen or digital marketing, and what it looks like after. Social media analytics or social media platforms all have a wealth of information on users and how many of those users are there, what their characteristics are. And you can use that to later on, when we talk about channels and social media channels, use this data on the audience and their specific characteristics to tailor your social media marketing strategies. But like, a lot of analytics and data does exist in these platforms. Then the other thing I would say from an online research perspective is keywords. Keywords, and there's many ways to do this. You know, some of the vendors are listed here. I'm not partial to any one of them, although I worked at Google for 6.5 years. But you know, really understand the keywords for your industry, and like look at not just that keyword, but the associated keyword groupings and related searches that people may be doing to get to a problem. And remember, so for example, you are a solar installer, right? You have certain keywords that you're going to put in your website and your articles to get interest from people who are looking to install solar on their roof. But there may be adjacent industries that may be looking for a problem in a different way. Like, for example, there may be a sustainable vineyard that is looking to install solar panels, but they may be searching for different things, right? Like they may be saying organic and sustainable viticulture and, you know, solar in those cases in farming. So those side cases and industries are also important for you to understand, so you can start to buy up those keywords and create articles on your website. I'm jumping the gun here on tactics, but we're still on research here. So I guess keyword research is an important aspect, and there's many tools out there to help you understand what your audience is looking for and help you improve your rankings. The next one I would say is customer review sites give you a wealth of information on, from a B2B standpoint, G2, Trust Radius, Capterra are some of the sites that people frequent before making a buying decision. So it's important to understand what the competitive landscape looks like and what the users are saying about these products, because that also reveals a lot of information on what pain points are being solved and what are not, and what people love. B2C, there's a lot of industry specific ones. I'm not going to go into it, but do look for those. There are, you know, consumer reports and Better Business Bureaus and different kinds of sources of information on reviews. Competitively, this is another one I would say, like there's tools like SimilarWeb, BuzzSumo that gives you insights into competitor traffic, what their paid media strategy is and what their top content is. I know I've said a lot, so these are some of the important tools to bear in mind when you're doing your audience research and when you're looking for what platforms they're using and what their online footprint is. What happens next is, let me show you. So this is an example actually of a case study. We've hidden the logo here, but this was a customer journey map that was developed for a persona. This was a marine protection area manager, and this was an ocean monitoring platform. And we've hidden some of the other details, but essentially what you can see here is at the top, the 6 stages of the buyer journey or the user journey, from awareness to evaluation of the tools. They make a decision, they start to onboard themselves, then they start to engage with this, and they start to become retained loyal users, and they become advocates. These are the 6 stages. And then from top to bottom, these reveal the different things that this persona is feeling, right? Like what are their objectives in each stage of the buying journey? What are they thinking? What are they doing? What are the emotions? What are the pain points? And, you know, who else is involved in their buying decision, and what are some touch points? So this is just a template, but to tell you that this is an important part of designing your digital marketing strategy, is to create a journey map. It can be as basic as you want, doesn't need to be as detailed, but it's important to understand what they're thinking, feeling, doing at each stage in the buying journey, so you can give them that solution through your marketing. I'll pause here, see if there's any questions. Nothing.
You know,
Specifically, oh, sorry. Yeah, just
I
specifically, I want to ask the audience, I just want to emphasize Phil's question in the, or Phil's sort of ask out to the audience that he put in the chat here, is that you know, we want this to be as interactive as possible. And we're most curious about the real challenges that you're experiencing now. So, you know, I think this sort of map has been fantastic thus far, and I would ask you all to really chime in if you have questions about how do you choose specific tools and tactics. I think that that would allow us to really tailor this conversation to something that could be more useful for you.
And just so that we could see if you're getting a response, if you could use the feature to to raise your hand so your face pops to the top, that would be great. While we're waiting for see if anybody has any questions, you know, one of the other things I thought was, if you're trying to figure out which tool to use, or if you've struggled with certain tools, or you know of a certain area but you don't know what success looks like, letting us know that is also kind of helpful, because it gives us something to dig into. Because, you know, having played around with a number of those different tools, when I was early on in this, it was just trying to understand what all those things meant, right? And then what we would expect in terms of delivering them into results, right? And then the more knowledgeable and nuanced we get, the more interesting stuff comes along. But I don't see any hands that have popped up, so I guess that means we have the ability to keep moving forward.
Awesome. And Phil, how do I see the results of the third question in the poll? I can see the.
I think you should be able to scroll down. Apologies, everyone. Still kind of new with some of the polls. Yeah, on mine, I have a slider that shows all the way down, and I could scroll all the way down. So, and then let's see if I click on view details. Ooh, it'll pop it out into another window.
That's fine. We can look at that later. Yeah, I mean, just real quick, I think it looks like we have in terms of what stage is your company at, we've got 2 who are in the idea stage, 3 who are in the pre-seed stage, and 2 who have introduced themselves as other. But just looking at the chat, it looks like we've got 1 person who's from an investment firm, and 1 person who I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm not sure what those 2 other things were. Oh, but I do see someone's hand is raised.
David, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so thanks for the customer journey presentation. And as I learn more about this and continue down this path, I guess I have some comments and questions. So, I mean, I have to give you some context. So I'm an engineer that has came up in the ranks from an energy engineering perspective from the utilities, right? So I understand the process procedures that it takes to implement an energy efficiency project that's successful, right? So from that position, what I've seen in the public is that awareness, evaluation, and onboarding is one of the most difficult things, and education is involved in engagement, retention, and advocacy the whole way through because of the newness of this industry. Let's remember that demand-side management, energy efficiency has only been around since the 1970s, right? So my question is, do you really think that we have the customer journey and energy efficiency down enough that to where they know enough and awareness doesn't take as long? Or like, how can we expedite that part of the process? And then evaluation, that's energy audits, right? We've been doing that a long time. I'm thinking of it from an operational standpoint. So this has been the bane of my existence since I've been in this industry, because it's new and I like new things. So yeah, any comment you have there would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to comment, and you know, Phil and team, feel free to chime in. In my experience, when we do this journey map, it is very interesting, but typically product and engineering teams tend to focus in the middle of the journey map. Like, oh, how was the onboarding? How was the engagement? Like, are they using all the features and stuff? But when you actually do the journey map, we say, well, wait, stop a second here. They're not aware about you and all the things you can do. Right. You have 50 features, but they're only aware of 5. So awareness is a problem. And we talk about how do you create those resources and ways for your brand to stand out and for you to educate the customer on what your solution is and where do you do that and what are the right places where they're receptive to education. It's not going to be when you knock on the door and you're giving them a pamphlet. They're not listening then. So you've got to get them in other ways, right? So for sure, I 100% agree with you. The awareness and the evaluation phases are the most important. And a lot of times clients don't pay attention to that. And they just want business. They're like, oh, give me some, I want more leads. I want, more people to buy our stuff. But like the journey started way back when. And have you done the right things to educate the customer in the channels that they are listening to, with the influencers that they are, responding to? And so we'll talk about some of those challenges in the presentation, but like spot on. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments, Phil or team?
No, I totally agree with you. We've seen perfect examples of that. Just this week working with clients, and I think we can dig into it in a little more detail if we have some time at the end on some of the specifics and some of the challenges. But since the landscape is changing and the awareness is changing so much of what it means for individuals or for different buyers, I think education seems to be fundamental to the whole process.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just having the intention to do it. Because a lot of these tools are free. There's a lot you can do on your own to educate, but it just has to be done consistently. And the topics have to be written in a way that the audience can, absorb it. I know I have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to go a little bit faster through the presentation, and we'll open up for questions. Okay, picking your marketing channel. I like Tom Fishburne. He's a cartoonist that does marketing cartoons, and I'll let you read through it. But, when typically in companies, what we see is a huge focus on the next big digital channel. Is it TikTok? Is it Pinterest? Is it YouTube? Or whatever your flavor of the month is? And the reality is, sometimes it's all of the above and it's none of the above. It's really, what is your big idea, right? A good campaign strategy is built on a very good idea, which has backing in terms of a solid understanding of the audience and how your solution meets their needs. So without that, nothing exists. So anyway, this is an important reminder for me also, is not to get excited about the latest channel, but really to, keep the big idea in mind. These are some of the digital channels you all might have heard of: email, social, web, content, paid media, virtual events, podcasts, and certainly all of you may have attended some of these or experienced some of these. And the takeaway is, each of those in isolation are good, but when they're used together, they can be better. And we are seeing, according to Forrester and a cross-channel marketing study done recently, integrating multiple channels gives you a 12.5% increase in lift and engagement versus a single channel. So think about adding multiple channels to your campaign theme when you're launching it. And we'll go into that in a bit. I have a perspective. I know you all know what social media is and email marketing is. So what I did here is try to talk about what you should do differently for a climate company. So that's the lens with which we'll go through this. So from a social standpoint, really the purpose of social media is to build a relationship with customers and prospects, generate awareness, and potentially, get leads and sales from this channel. Where I would say you should focus more on from a climate standpoint is these partnerships and collaborations, because in climate, we're noticing there's a lot of interesting stakeholders and influencers in a decision. You may have environmental organizations, NGOs, climate tech companies, for-profit companies that are, that need to buy carbon credits or whatnot. There's a lot of interesting players in this space. And because we still don't know how this is all going to resolve itself, like focus from the beginning on building out a broad collaborative network in your social media and kind of track how things are going from a metric standpoint, like, you know, your impressions, likes, conversions to if you have a webinar or a white paper or, you know, some asset that you're focusing on in social media, like track how that's doing. But broadly speaking, this needs to be always on and engaging. The second one is email marketing. This is an important one that you all must be using to promote your content, promote your assets, share, you know, updates on your product roadmap, any news, maybe any partnerships you have, and generally kind of having a relationship at a regular cadence with your subscribers. So that's why you have email marketing. But I would say where you can knock it out of the park with being a climate company is if you can personalize the content based on the topic of interest and the specific benefits of your company's technology. So if you have one solution, but you have multiple use cases and they span multiple industries, you should consider doing an industry-specific newsletter and tailoring the content. Or if you can personalize it to an individual level or an organization level, and certainly you have the tools to do that. It's just a matter of you understanding your audience and your database of email recipients well enough. With pay-per-click advertising, I would say to Simon Sinek's point earlier, you don't want to send everyone the same message. You want to target and pick and choose those that are interested in your solution. So that targeting becomes important, and you can do amazing targeting in paid media based on location and demographics and in different types of behaviors. And I would say this is where, you know, from a PPC standpoint, really tailoring your ads to focus on impact stories and creating your audience, different audiences, and targeting your ads to those audiences will go a long way. From a content marketing perspective, this is where I've been focusing a lot of my efforts with my clients is to, I think David's point earlier, a lot of awareness and evaluation is challenging for a lot of new players in the climate space. So you really want to be able to showcase your thought leadership, and you want to highlight the benefits of your solution as a whole. And you want to do this through different ways. You want to focus on case studies. You want to talk about, you know, like support some research in this area so that people can actually learn from you, not just buy your product. So I would say from a content marketing perspective, like storytelling, like highlighting impact stories, like real world impact stories that show the effectiveness of your technology in addressing certain climate issues, like tell that story, like really, you know, beat that one, because that's going to get you a lot of, you know, investment down the line, but also show people the proof that your solution's working. I would say another important area is just like videos and podcasts and webinars. Like not only do they help you demonstrate your products and share examples to a broad audience, but they start to, there's a certain expectation that gets built in your audience that, hey, this person's going to do a Wisdom Wednesday every week, like Phil's doing, or they're going to come in every month and share, you know, their learnings from the field. You know, whatever it is, kind of setting that expectation starts to build that virtual bond with your target audience. The last two are related, but your web presence and optimizing your web presence are two important areas that you cannot neglect. Like as a brand that is even in your early stage, even as a pre-seed company, like, and you can do this on your own, make sure your website is mobile friendly, that it's loading fast, and that you're leading with the solution and not with your products, right? Like there's a tendency to say, I make XYZ product, but really you should be talking from an audience and a solution perspective. Remember all the stuff we talked about, all the personas and what they care about, lead with that. Make sure your navigation's clear and that your content is good. And you should be looking at how your website's performing because of the analytics that should be built into most web platforms now. From an SEO standpoint, Thank you, Phil. I will wrap it up. From an SEO standpoint, too, like researching, the SEM rushes, the Ahrefs, and all of those tools you have to really understand and research your keywords will go a long way in giving you that optimized website. So researching keywords, kind of creating backlinks from reputable sites. This is where those partnerships, which we talked about previously, will come in hand, because now you have backlinks from reputable sites and your content will rise to the top. And then finally, I would say just like reporting on, and this is from more of a media PR perspective, like track and report on metrics that show your company's technology and make it a consistent practice. So that people start to, like, maybe you have an index you create for the product that you're developing, like just make it a habit to share that regularly. When you're thinking about channels, you also want to think about the buyer type and then the buyer stage. And this is because each channel kind of operates at different stage in the buying journey. Like you, and I can probably spend a whole hour discussing this, but just, and this is intuitive, like most of you should be able to know, like when am I ready to sign the deal? At that point, what am I consuming? I'm looking at white papers and I'm looking at case studies and I'm looking for demos on the product, right? If you give me like social posts and, high level webinars on thought leadership, at that point, I'm not interested because I've already made the evaluation decision. I'm like just about ready to go. So you want to think about the stage and your audience carefully when picking your channels. This is just an example of a leading sustainability platform and how we mapped out their enterprise playbook, if you will. The stage here means top, tofu means top of funnel, mofu is middle of funnel, and bofu is bottom of funnel. So we were mapping out what channels and what personas we have and what is the message that needs to go to them at that level. And so by a lot of good digital marketing is planning about the stage, the region, the persona, and what is the most important message to deliver to them. So that kind of brings us to the end of channels. I know we have some more content, but I'm just going to walk through one last thing, which is when you're developing your messaging, you really want to think about, how do you capture the audience interest, audience attention? How do you get them to take interest in what you're saying and kind of, go from that interest to a desire to learn more about your product and finally take action. This is kind of the framework that was developed in a while ago, 100 or so years ago, but it still is one of the most widely used marketing models out there. And this is an example of a messaging house that I constructed for a measurement software platform. But you could see them when I say lead with your highest level statement and then kind of build from there. You have your value statements, and then you have what you would use as a marketing tagline. Like, let's say insights you can use as your marketing tagline. The story you're building out in media, depending on how much space you have to work with and how many words you have, you're building out a story arc around, like consumer behavior has changed, there's new needs and new solutions. So our solution is a modern marketing measurement tool. And we're giving them then, these are the reasons to believe. They have questions on why should I do this? Why should I pay attention to what you're saying about modern measurement? And we're kind of saying, well, these are the reasons to believe, and kind of explaining more. And I know we're rushed for time here. I won't go into it, but a messaging hierarchy is very important so you can address questions that may come from your audience through various channels. And that's about it. You want to bring it all together into an integrated campaign. So it looks something like this, where you have multiple channels, but they're all kind of telling the same story with different flavors so that you're getting the message across. And I think that's about it. We talked about research, we talked about channels, we talked about messaging, and then, always measuring and optimizing your performance. So I will stop now and hear from you all. Any questions, any comments?
Well, David had a really good question that was somewhere in the chat. We're trying to surface it. David, do you want to ask your question again?
Yeah, no problem. I was during the time when you were talking about email marketing, newsletters. I was thinking about creating a monthly newsletter. I've never done that before, but I know that I have to continue to have stuff to talk about for 12 months. I got to do 12 of them. I don't want to start it and stop because then I'm wasting time and money.
Mhm.
And so I'm just, I'm interested in just wondering if I get some insights. And I saw somebody, not somebody, but somebody that provided some insight about LinkedIn, and they have a free newsletter, I guess, application. So that's cool. But yeah, that was my comment and question.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way of disseminating information because you already have an audience there, and you want to go for tools like this where you already have a built-in audience. An email newsletter makes sense if you have a database of people that have subscribed to your newsletter or subscribed to your product, right? Then it makes sense to send an email newsletter. The cost at an early, depending on how many users you have, like cost can or cannot be a factor. The bigger issue, as you alluded to, is that editorial calendar. What am I going to say every month? And the best way to address that is to tackle that head on, block off a day and look at your product roadmap, key news, or what do I say, like things that are impacting your industry, right? Like you may have certain legislation that might be coming out, or the buying cycles are a certain way, or there's certain holidays that are important in this case, whatever that might be. Identify those things as well and start to really just map out what you might say thematically every month. You don't have to have the specifics, but you might say, I'm going to do 2 roadmap newsletters, maybe one in May and one in November. Big legislations coming out. Oh, elections are coming, so I should be prepared to say that. Like kind of having that helps me, because when I'm working on these things and I have to plan things, a year in advance, what I do is do exactly what I told you. I get the product roadmap, I look at big important dates for the company, and I also look at my goals that I need to meet. Like if I want to get 100 leads per month, I start to think about how am I going to get these 100 leads, right? That means I need to send this newsletter out to X amount of people. And I start to think about the conversion and the math to get to a finite business goal that I may have set for myself. Like I want to drive X amount of likes or increase my users or whatnot, right? So I think some of those things will help you develop, an editorial calendar. But I'm curious what the others in the team think here, like Jalen and Lena. You may have other ideas.
I agree. I think those are some great insights. Having a content strategy beforehand always makes it easier. Having to scramble every month is not fun. But I do want to make sure we give everyone in the audience one more last chance to ask a question before we come up on time.
I can ask follow-on questions.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
saw one person come off mute, but
I know.
I was like,
talk, y'all. So hey.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, great. So no, I liked everything that you talked about. I just want to let you know where I'm at. So like I've done some thought leadership. I have things lined out for even the rest of this month, and then I'm going out throughout the rest of the year. What I'm thinking about is retention, because what I've noticed about my customer journey and is that I'm telling them that there's an issue that they're not fully aware of, and I have a solution that will correct that issue and help you with others, right? So as I go down this path, the thought leadership, now I have people in my, I guess you can say, in my funnel, and I'm learning the dynamics of it, and I want to continue to touch them, to say hi, because they come back. Like, they'll be ready in a month, or they'll be ready in 2 months. I'm not sure of that yet. So like, that's what I'm thinking about with emails, is the retention to stay on their mind so that they can make the decision when they're ready.
Yeah, yeah. And then some of the other things we talked about, like content marketing, right? Where you're not really selling them on anything, but you're staying top of mind for them beyond email, because sometimes they may or may not read the email. I think doing a regular webinar
Okay.
or, some kind of a virtual engagement, like a Zoom call even, just to check in. And are you saying these are existing customers, or are they prospects for you?
They're warm prospects that are highly interested, and they're continuing to, like, they're gaining more understanding, creating a relationship.
Got it. Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's some of the bottom of funnel strategies will work for you, and we can take this offline too, since I know we're out of time. Happy to chat offline.
Okay, and your information is on right here.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and actually this is the LinkedIn page for our company, but I monitor that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we often talk about is, I don't know if we covered any sort of items for the digital goodie bag or for a leave behind for this, but definitely encourage people to reach out if you have more questions for Deepti directly, and to share with us as you're reflecting on this conversation, or as you're digging through, what other topics we want to get at. First, I want to thank Deepti for preparing such a great presentation and sharing it with us, and then sharing with everybody for coming, which is encouraging people to think a little bit about, if you want to go deeper, what would you want to get into? If you have some specific questions or experiences that you want to cover, can you share them with us? I would suggest sharing this with us through by email, or on I believe there's ability to respond through Luma. I'm not sure. We're going to be setting up a community chat so that we can have these conversations keep on going. The objective is to turn this into, as we get started, we're setting some of the foundations and talking about some of the basics. As we get going, we want to turn this into more and more of a conversation that's an ongoing conversation, where we can draw some of our peers and partners and colleagues, some other experts from our ecosystem, into an ongoing sharing of insights, so that this is not a static once and done thing. This is a first of an iteration of several conversations around a topic. And then when we review at the end of the month, there's a whole lot of things that people might have thought of the first week or the second week or the third week that is elevating their game in their marketing game writ large. And knowing, because like when I started this out, I didn't know the difference between these different types of marketings. I was like, I want to go to a marketer who could help me with this. And it turns out I needed to go to a marketer who could help me on the other end of the spectrum, right? Digital marketer, click-through rates, it was all a foreign language to me. And I'm sure it is to lots of people who have come from a specific discipline. So if we expand the knowledge across the discipline, expand the reach into people that we can speak with, then we know who to reach about which things, and then we can elevate the conversation as we move forward. That's the objective, and that's what we're working towards. I think we made a good step towards it today, and appreciate everyone for showing up. We'll probably follow up with everyone directly with a summary of the call, with any sort of handouts or articles that we think might be helpful, and then and a request for topics that are interesting to you, things that we could do to improve. One of the things we are doing is we're kind of rebranding starting in August. We're going to shift from Wednesdays to Thursdays and brand it as Throughline Network. So this will be Throughline Thursdays next week. And next week when we do this, we're starting to talk about how to build teams, how to build and grow teams. So the topic will be around how to recruit the right team members, how to find how to develop the story about your company and the structure and its vision and its goals, so that you're attracting the right people to you. And then we'll talk about different ways to build and fund that growth, which you can be built on, and the stories can be told by understanding the marketing and telling your story. So this is all additive, and we hope is all helpful to you. Thanks again for showing up. Anybody have parting shots?
I just wanted to say thank you again to Deepti. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing such a great presentation.
You're going to share share the deck. It's okay to share the deck with everybody afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. I'll share it.
Awesome.
Yes,
So-
thank you, Deepti. That was great. That was really helpful.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing you all next Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye,
See you.
everyone.
All right.